Hello and welcome to Module 7. We have made it to the last module of Psychology as a Science and Profession. Congratulations. We have some fun things to talk about today. First, we're going to touch on qualitative research, and then we're going to go into psychology associations, as well as talking about attending conferences and what we can do with that. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my slides. All right. Sorry, but I absolutely had to go with that very cute baby because it was really just incredible. So she is, this cute little baby right here is reading quite a bit for us on qualitative research, as well as how do you join an association and how do you attend and present at a conference. So we're going to learn a lot from her today. So let's first start with qualitative research. Qualitative research is a really interesting aspect of the research process. Oftentimes when we talk about doing research, we talk about running analyses that end up being quantitative in nature, where we end up using data where we can actually run mathematical operations on it. And we've talked about how we can do that previously, and obviously we'll talk more about that as you get further along in the program. But qualitative research, as we talked about earlier, is information that has to it a sense of subjective investigation into what an individual's experience is like. What is the quality, or what are the actual contents of a particular situation? Things are not measured on a scale, but rather people or experiences or issues provide us with information about what is happening in more subjective ways, in ways that that go beyond just numbers and actually explain what underlies the numbers. If I give a rating on a scale of 1 to 10 of pain, a 7, what does a 7 actually mean to me versus what does it mean to another person? And how do we compare those things, and how can we look at those things to come up with a more informed way to understand how to put together a pain scale? Oftentimes it's used as a supplemental method to using quantitative methods, but it can also be used as the primary method. Oftentimes we just want to know from interviews what's going on in a situation. Sometimes it's more about the process than it is about the outcome. For example, in psychotherapy research, we might want to know more, we might want to ask more open-ended questions about the process between the therapist and the client. And what goes on in those sessions that both people enjoy or find helpful, as opposed to outcomes of how much better the person gets following so many sessions of therapy that might be more quantitative in nature. Qualitative research can be analyzed just through conversations, for example. It's a really wonderful information for us to have. So let's go back for a moment and talk about what we had said. You know, when we talked about quantitative research, what was really the strength of quantitative research? It was the ability to provide precise answers. We had numbers, we had mathematical operations to specific research questions. It helped us to draw general conclusions about human behavior. But there's also relative weaknesses of quantitative statistics, and such that things like, we only know the numbers, we don't know what underlies it, we don't know the whole story. And so qualitative research can pick up there, can really provide more of that space. But it can be very subjective. And so we need to be careful about how we get that information, how subjective we're being, whether or not we can have focus groups in play to help us interpret the stuff so that we, just like in exploratory research, so that we don't then end up misinterpreting something just because it's through our own lens that might not actually be the correct lens. Qualitative research can help researchers to generate new ideas. So if we use it as supplemental information, do we want to find out when people rate their pain at different levels? How is it that they actually feel? What are the words behind those numbers? How can that help us come up with new ideas and new research questions based on the information we get from them? It provides us with greater empathy and understanding of the situation. Qualitative research can be conducted in many different ways. When we think about data collection, we think about collecting data through observation, through archival data, through artwork, through conversations, through many other things that we have. Interviews with people, for example, is a way to collect data. Just like when we talked about the exploratory research, we can conduct structured interviews, we can conduct semi-structured interviews, we can conduct unstructured interviews. So what does all of that mean again? A structured interview is where we ask questions, where we already have the questions prepared for us and we go only by the script. That way, if I have 5 different researchers asking 100 different participants questions, the information that we're getting is all based on the specific questions, and we don't know if we only got more information from some people versus other people because of the prompting of new information. So we need to be very careful when we go off of structure to realize that by prompting other information, we might be getting more than what we had asked for. And so maybe our questions weren't as viable as we think they might have been had we not gone off script later. Semi-structured is where we go off script after we ask the structured questions. We get some information and we say, can you elaborate on that? Tell us more about that situation. How does this relate to that? We get some more information from the person. Unstructured is where we go in with no questions. We don't know what we want to ask until we get there and the person starts to talk to us. We start to get information from that person that prompts us to ask them questions. Focus groups are great for qualitative research. Let's talk about what focus groups can do. Focus groups provide a space for you to get those qualitative feedback, for a focus group to look at it and say, you know, you interpreted it this way, but is it possible they meant this? Focus groups are great, particularly when they're diverse. Let's say we're talking about chronic pain. If we have one chronic pain expert and we have one qualitative research expert and we have one regular quantitative research expert, and then we also have somebody else who, I don't know, maybe a 4th person in some other field, or maybe 2 people in chronic pain research, maybe one with people from this population versus another for people with another chronic pain population, like maybe with a certain type of chronic pain or a different age group with chronic pain or a different gender with chronic pain, or in different parts of the world. And so what this does is it helps these different diverse individuals within this diverse group be able to say, it's interesting you saw it through this lens. I've been working with people with chronic pain issues for a long time. Excuse me. I've been working with people with chronic pain issues for a long time, and that's not the way I interpreted it at all. Well, that's interesting because I'm a person who doesn't necessarily interpret it the way you interpreted it through chronic pain eyes, but I've been doing qualitative research for a long time, and I actually feel like, you know, oftentimes when people respond in these ways with qualitative research, they oftentimes do it this way because they feel like they're limited only to so much space, or they shouldn't talk so much about themselves, or maybe the opposite, that they feel like it's a space to say whatever they want. And sometimes that means they go beyond the question asked. And so it doesn't always make sense and gets tangential. And so different people provide different aspects. Another person might say, oh, that's interesting you say that, but this person's actually in this age group, and I'm used to working with an older age group, which this person's in. And actually older people in general have these experiences, even if they're not experiencing chronic pain. So maybe that's always going on for that person. So there's a lot of focus group stuff that's great. But there's dynamics at play in focus group. We need to worry about groupthink. We need to worry that people really are hearing each other, that they're not all just going with what one person says or being influenced too much by one or the other, that they can hold on to their own opinions, their own thoughts, in addition to listening to each other. Focus groups can also review transcripts of information from participants. So then what happens next? Well, with qualitative research, after we collect the data in the way that we decide to, we have to put a focus group together to do coding. And the way that we code the research is that we go through and we each go through the first 10, let's say, out of 100 different responses. We choose a certain percentage that's small, and we go through and we look at, okay, how would we code this information? What categories would we put it into? If it's about chronic pain, is it about a particular type of chronic pain? If we're asking them a question like, please describe your chronic pain over the last week, and the response was answering in a way that was talking about the level of pain they had, maybe the type of chronic pain they had, maybe how long it lasted, maybe if it was related to a particular type of activity they were doing, whether it was work or whether it was a personal life activity. All of those themes become our domains that we end up coding the information into. After reviewing the first 10 responses independently and bringing that back to the entire group, we then go over, for those first 10 responses, what are the different domains that each of us came up with individually? And then how do we agree with each other or not? And each person gets a turn within that group to rotate through and be the person who gets to be the final decider on the group of agreed upon domains. And then we go to the next participant's response and the next one. And when we get through the first 10, then we decide on, okay, here's a general theme of domains that we have, but we want them to become general over time. So if of those first 10, there's only one participant's response that has a particular domain, we might put that domain into a larger other umbrella domain, because we want the domains to start matching up. So if some domains seem like they can be similar to each other, then use one umbrella domain if they mean the same thing. Then usually split up again, go with maybe the next 30% of the data, and go ahead and individually code based on the domains that you have and extra domains you come up with. Then you come back together, look at your agreed upon domains for each participant, rotate through like you did before, and then you come up with all those responses, you come up with your final agreed upon domains, so that each of you then go and code the rest of the responses on your own. And you use only the domains that you came up with for like the first 40% of the data that you started with. Usually it's more like 25% of the data, but then what you do is you come back and you calculate the inner rate of reliability between the domains, how much you agreed with each other out of how much you could have agreed. Doing this helps us to understand the way participants are responding to the questions, what the general themes are, how they're related to each other or different from each other, what more pointed questions we can ask in the future, what more pointed questions we can ask now to prompt them for more information or some of them, and where we can go with future directions of the research. At that point, we create categories within the different domains that are basically like subdomains. We have descriptions for those categories and domains, and then we give examples. And that is what qualitative research is all about. So let's stretch for a moment, and we're going to start talking about psychological associations and the primary ones and where to go from there. So go ahead and take a moment or two break, and then we'll get started again.